In today's video, I'm going to cover 6 oddly specific signs and symptoms of social anxiety. You're not going to find these symptoms in the DSM. These are just 6 odd things that I have found are very common with people who struggle with social anxiety. Number 1, you apologize for everything. Because you don't want to be an inconvenience to other people and you don't want to stand out and you don't want to ruffle any feathers, you will apologize for literally anything. Anything that makes you the center of attention or anything that you think causes some sort of nuisance to somebody else, you will apologize for it to make sure that you don't have to feel uncomfortable. And while I get this, I totally understand. I've been there before. I really struggled with this myself. But what I had to learn was I should only apologize if I feel guilty, not if I feel anxious. Because apologizing when you feel anxious isn't an actual apology. You're not apologizing for anything you did wrong. You're just apologizing for existence. You're apologizing for feeling uncomfortable. And every time you do that, you subconsciously tell yourself that you're less than other people, that you need to apologize for your mere existence. And this is problematic. You need to respect yourself. You don't have to apologize for every little thing that you do. And it's time you give yourself a break and cut yourself some slack. Number 2, you try to look occupied or busy when you're in public. Because we're socially anxious, we don't want to interact with other people, we don't want to have conversations with other people. So we will do everything to make it look like we don't want to talk to other people. Whether that's reading a book that we're not actually reading, we might yawn in public to make it look like we're disinterested. We'll do all these things just to avert any sort of eye contact or conversation with anyone around us. And while again, this is understandable, it's another tactic that we're using to avoid any conversation or any sort of social interaction that makes us uncomfortable. But at some point, we have to challenge ourselves. And this would be a great first step for you to challenge yourself, where you don't actually have to go out and talk to people. You just have to stop preventing yourself from being so closed off to the world. Just stand there. If people want to look at you, if people want to come up to you, that's a good first step for you. You don't necessarily have to engage in any kind of deep conversation just yet. Number 3, you get very good at reading other people, particularly their moods and their tones of voice, their body language, because you're always calibrating to make sure that you're not bothering anybody or you're not upsetting anybody. You get very good at understanding what people are doing, what people are thinking, how people are feeling. But sometimes this can get obsessive, and sometimes we will misread things that aren't actually there because we're trying to overcorrect and make sure that nothing is amiss. I struggled with this for a long time, and what you really have to do is accept the fact that you are not responsible for other people's emotions around you. Unless you're doing something obviously egregious or rude or impolite, that's one thing. But if you're just existing or you're just having a casual conversation, it's not your job to regulate other people's emotions. So if you notice that someone else's posture is off or their mood or their tone is off, just remind yourself, hey, I noticed that. It's making me feel like I want to change how I interact with this person, but I shouldn't change how I want to interact with this person. I should just focus on talking about what I want to talk about or doing what I want to do. And let that other person figure out their own problem. Number 4, you get very good at tolerating other intolerable feelings. We don't want to feel socially anxious, but it's okay if we feel really hungry. We'll sit there and wait at the table for an hour and a half, even though our food hasn't come, because we don't want to be a disturbance to anybody else. We don't want to stand out. We don't want to make a ruckus. So we'll just sit there starving because we'd rather feel that than feel anxious inside. And this doesn't just have to do with hunger. This could be any other emotion that's uncomfortable for you. But it's really important that we acknowledge that our body is talking to us when it's sending us signals and emotions. And if you get another uncomfortable feeling, it's okay to express that. It's okay to act on that. If you have to go to the bathroom, then you have to go to the bathroom. But sometimes because we're socially anxious, again, we don't want to be seen like we're doing something awkward or weird, or we're rushing, or we're trying to cut ahead of somebody, whatever the case is. But as the title of the Ace Ventura movie says, sometimes nature calls. Number 5, which is very similar to number 4, is we become very patient. I notice that people with social anxiety are often very patient because they learn to put others' emotions and others' needs ahead of their own. So they will sit and wait and let the other person do whatever they want and get whatever they need, and you're always the last person. And patience isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think the world could use a lot more patience. It's a good thing. It's a good skill to have, to be able to be patient when you need to, but not when it's at the expense of your own needs and in some cases your own safety. And number 6, you find it very hard to eat or walk or really do anything in public. A lot of times we think of social anxiety, we think of conversing and talking to people, but that isn't all social anxiety is. A lot of people with social anxiety have a hard time walking down the street. They worry about, how am I walking? What are people thinking about the clothes that I'm wearing? What are people thinking about how my body looks, how my face looks? If they go out to eat alone in the restaurant, they might think about how they're eating. Am I eating the right way? Do people think I eat in a funny way? Are people thinking I'm a loser because I'm eating alone? There's all sorts of other social aspects that don't necessarily have to do with socializing, talking, engaging with people, that people with social anxiety really struggle with because their brain is always worried about what other people around them think about that. And there's really nowhere you can go to escape that. And this is what's so hard about overcoming social anxieties, because anywhere you go, you really can't hide unless you just hole yourself up in your house. But you can only do that so long before you start getting very lonely, very isolated, and very depressed. So I would encourage you, if you notice these signs and other signs of social anxiety, to go see a therapist, find out what's going on, start to challenge yourself in ways that feel comfortable enough for you that you think you could do them, to build up some tolerance, and to keep in mind that social anxiety is something that you can work on. And in some cases, it's something that you can cure. There are people who have been socially anxious for a very long time and they work on it, and eventually they're not anxious anymore. There are things you can do. So don't get discouraged if you really struggle with it. I myself struggled with social anxiety when I was younger. I don't struggle with it much anymore. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks again for checking in, and I'll see you soon.